So let me go ahead and quickly do introductions across the table. Same format as the previous panel. I'd like to pose the first question regarding your sense of necessity for water goals, and then in particular through the lens of water resource management, your sense of those goal areas. And then we'll move into a discussion about the private sector relationship to that. So we have 5 panelists. To my immediate left, Bharat Sharma, who's the principal researcher, water resources, and coordinator, IWMI India program. That's the International Water Management Institute. Second to the left, Laila Petrie. Did I get that right, Laila? Okay, Laila Petrie, Corporate Relations Manager, Sustainable Construction, WWF International. Next, moving down, Srinivasan Iyer, Assistant Country Director and Head Energy and Environment Unit, UNDP India. Next, Adrian Sim, Executive Director for the Alliance for Water Stewardship. And finally, Deepak Arora, Vice President, the Essar Foundation. So thank you all very much for your willingness to spend time here. So I think if it's okay, I'm going to start in reverse order this time. So Deepak, I'm going to head in your direction first. And again, just quickly referencing our agenda, if we could take a look at that first set of questions. Should there be water-related goals? And if so, what issues should a new water-related goals ideally cover? And again, our specific focus is the water resource management thematic area. So please.
Thank you. I believe that discussion on not having goals is not really a discussion, because there is an accepted fact that there should be water-related goals, and everyone in the country, or especially the corporate sector, needs to rise to meet the expectations and also its own commitments. Because if we see the larger the consumption really comes from the industrial sector, and as in the previous session it was pointed out, that there are companies which are heading towards water neutrality goal, where probably they will even end up conserving more water than what they are consuming. So I think that automatically sets the direction and the target of what we should really be looking at.
Great. Thank you very much. Adrian, I move to you.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Water-related goals, no surprise there. I guess the real question is what they should look like, what they should be trying to address.
Mm-hmm.
Josephina made some really good description of the pluses and minuses of the strengths and weaknesses of the MDG framework. And I guess for me the fundamental weaknesses were they didn't really address the root causes, and they were pretty weak on partnerships, despite the fact that MDG 8 is a global partnership for development. I might be taken up on this, but it was kind of shoved in at the end as a bit of a political exercise. You can take me up on that after if you like. So these things, addressing root causes, really facilitating and requiring constructive partnerships, as I think is exactly what the Sustainable Development Goals need to do. And if I can be a bit provocative, we're now already slipping into the terminology SDGs, and I'd just like to remind the S stands for sustainable. And how serious are we about that sustainability? Because in many respects, I've yet to see much compelling evidence of that efficiencies can outstrip and outpace scale in the way they need to, and continue to outpace them in order for sustainability really to be achieved. So when it comes to water resource management, yes, that absolutely needs to be addressed. That absolutely needs to be addressed as a root cause, as a precondition of delivery of WASH. And it needs to be done through sustainable partnerships and effective partnerships. But let's not use the word sustainable too flippantly. It's a big and serious issue, and not something which we're going to get get around without a really concerted effort. And lastly, if I may, Rob, just quickly say about the indicators. That's where this is really going to be played out. Are they going to succeed or are they going to fail? And if those indicators can provide the facilitating framework for improved business engagement in water resource management, then we stand a chance. If they can guide business towards the use of the various approaches that we've been talking about here this week, including our standard, then that's going to be a really important part of the equation, both in facilitating better business practice, but also facilitating the partnerships that I'm alluding to. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think the answer as to whether we need a goal on water, it's a resounding yes, not surprising. And not because it's an underpinning to WASH, but because it's too crucial to life. And at least in India, there is increasing recognition that water is perhaps the most important vector through which climate affects life, particularly the lives of the poor. Now, whether water resource management, the goal around water resources should be a global goal or a combination of national goals is something that's up for question. And in fact, we see a lot of discussion here that in this country that there is merit for it to be a global goal only if, one, it admits different national positions, and secondly, if by becoming a global goal, it attracts greater global resources for its resolution or for its achievement, as against it being merely a national goal. So the question is around whether there should be global goals or there should be a set of national goals related to water, because there are still major issues about cross-border working on water as a resource. Now, in terms of what the goal would look like, I think it should be all of the three. First, sustainability, as Adrian just mentioned, certainly. And in India, there is a very serious threat to water. 60% of India's districts are running out of water, either quantity or quality. It should also be about water use efficiency, and here's where I think the private sector comes in very, very key. And we should be looking at water use efficiency, because water plays a key part of almost all production processes, and therefore there is no way that we can do more with that limited resource of water. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, it's about access. So whatever the goal may be, whichever way it's defined, it's got to be something that combines all three. Thank you.
Thank you. Laila.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to take a slightly different route in my analysis. I think for me, obviously, we all seem to agree that the water-related goals are a positive thing, but I think I would take quite a different approach to how I would envisage a water-related goal. I think for practical reasons and for more kind of general reasons, I think practically speaking, the idea of putting together a quantitative or qualitative goal, or having some kind of measurement that aims to be universal, sorry, mine's not loud enough, that aims to be universal and yet applicable at specific geographies, I think that would be incredibly complex, very, very difficult to measure, and it's potentially setting up a very difficult situation for actually delivery. So what I would say is probably more feasible from my particular experience and the experience of WWF is to look at the institutional goals. So instead of focusing on delivery, actually say, do we have the capacity in place to understand what the individual issues are, even at basin level, which is kind of the unit of measurement that seems to be most important. Do we have the institutional capacity to understand all of the different claims on water, the stakeholder views? Can we bring those together? Can we balance up the questions about economic development versus sustainability versus human access? And therefore, can we set appropriate targets at the salient level? And I think all of the ideas about specific delivery on those targets, they all just need to be wrapped up in a framework that's actually competently able to manage those difficulties and reassess them on an ongoing basis, because water issues are not static, and therefore you need that flexibility and that real capacity in the system. Now the question is, where would you get the resource to make that happen? And I think that's very challenging, but certainly I would say that the great thing about having this kind of target is it is a way of flagging the need for resource, and it's a way of potentially channeling resource both from public and private institutions into creating those particular mechanisms that are so needed.
Thank you. Deepak?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. I shall try to agree to bit which Laila said. My perspective is that the M part of it, the goals should be more prominent, more significant in respect of water resource management goals than water resources goal per se. Our analysis, global analysis, has shown that mostly in the developing countries, whenever we have resources, generally the financial resources, we set up water resources goals, that so much billion cubic meter of water will be converted, so much canal will be done, if a factory is to be established, so many wells will be done. But the management part of it is a really lacking part of it, unless we have the water resources management goals so that they become sustainable. We do not fall into a next trap, consider those kind of things. As we say, especially in this South Asia, including India, Pakistan and other countries, we developed a very fantastic, very super we can say water resources, surface water resources infrastructure, which is considered the best in the world, the Indus and Bhakra, etc. But if you review those systems during these days, they are some of the poorest performing systems because the management part has been lacking and kind of thing. But similar things can be cited examples in other part of it. So the emphasis, whenever we want to start, the equal or rather more emphasis should be put on the management goals as well, per se, as the water resources goals include.
Thank you. So we've got about 5 minutes. So what I'd like to do, if I can, follow-up observation? Please go ahead, and then I'd like to at least put an observation out, start to get some response back, and then we'll break. Go ahead.
Talking about the goals, there are three things that come to my mind after giving a little bit of thought. The goals could be segregated into conservation. That's one, because that's one of the key targets that we are looking at. Second is the issue of access, and third is the distribution part of it, because essentially these three things will lead to let's say having 100% distribution or access to water. So when to make my point, I would like to take an example. If you look at Chhattisgarh or the central states, which have perhaps the densest forest cover that we may have anywhere in the world, and it receives very high amount of rainfall. But when you really go into those areas, which are also very badly affected by some of the movements, but the access to water is just not there. You will not find wells for kilometers, and so in an area which is high volume of rainfall, not having an access to water or not having the basic techniques to conserve water, it, in contrast to a place like an urban city where the rainfall may not be that much, but the usage and consumption of water is far more when you look at the per capita consumption. So it is a distribution, our ability to distribute and collect and then distribute the resources adequately will lead to much better water footprint across the country. And where I also believe that there is a significant role for the different players, be it the private sector, be it the government sector, and in certain areas it will be a more commercial kind of a model which may succeed, while in certain areas where the basic access itself is an issue, there probably a more government supported system or a mechanism may be a little more successful. But the most essential paradigm of this, or the most essential component which will lead to success, is a more decentralized management structure, because there is no way that one solution will work in different parts of the country, and that really needs to be thought far more thoughtfully. And how do we really get to the grassroots where we converge at a more decentralized level, and then maybe have a national goal as an outcome of that convergence.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to pose a question back, and we'll have just a chance for one response. We'll take a break, and it'll provide others a chance to think a bit about this. And we'll have about 10 minutes after the break to wrap this panel up. But Srinivasan, I'd like to turn to you. So get that pen up. Here we go. So as I look across the observations, it's interesting. On the previous panel, the observation was made that there's a compelling case for WASH-related goals because the remainder of the development goals, whether they be the current or the future goals, are dependent on success in that area. And then, Adrian, if I got it right, it seems to me that you set up, in the context of root causes, a further dependence that said the water-related achievements or goals are dependent on water resources management, effective water resources management. So we're starting to develop a little bit of a dependency diagram here, which is great. Sorry, you're appealing to one aspect of my brain. But in that context, I felt like each of you as panelists were talking about something fairly similar. In that it is it's the institutional aspect of WRM, meaning is it institutionally present in an effective way? That is one potential way of looking at how to track progress in this area. And you each spoke about it a little bit differently. I think my best notes relate to, Laila, what you said in terms of institutional related goals, so capacity in place, claims on water, can you balance up, and those types of things. So question back to you, Srinivasan, does that thread, that notion that within the water resources management area, exploring the opportunity to land goals within the notion of institutional progress, which also keeps it potentially more locally tailored, which was also a point that was just made. Does that resonate with you?
It does. To a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
I think and I'll explain why. First of all, it's possible to tailor it to national conditions better if it's institutional.
Okay.
So that's certainly a major advantage. Secondly, it's also where nations are at their weakest, as some of my panelists remarked. However, I think on access to water, it's also important to have an outcome level measurement, because one should not make that conditional upon. I mean, in a sense, if that makes access far more urgent, and therefore that links back to whether it's drinking water or whether it's to water as playing a very primary role in economies such as India, where there's still 2/3 of India derives at least a substantial portion of her income from water-related occupations directly related. Access becomes very key, and therefore it's important for one to put that right up front. So on matters such as efficiency, on matters such as sustainability, I would still say institutional issues could be good for the world to focus on, but access is too close to the core in a sense, and that should be retained in some kind of a definition which goes beyond institutions into outcomes.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. So withhold applause for the panel. They're not done yet. We've cut about 1 minute into the break, but I would like to ask that we're back promptly at 4 o'clock, if not a few minutes earlier. We'll look to pick up some time here. And then panelists, if you wouldn't mind coming back for an additional 10 minutes, we'll pick up this thread, and then I would like to, if we, as time allows, call out the question about private sector relationship. So thank you. See you in a few minutes.